Good morning to you from the KTN News Center here in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. But for us here at the Standard Group Center, it is not a very good morning. We have lost one of us. We are mourning the loss of one of us, a man whose voice I have heard in my ear as a news anchor for the last 8 years. A voice becoming so familiar, giving me news directions. One of our news directors, Edwin Audi, who we lost yesterday in a road accident. So it's a difficult morning for us here at the KTN News Center. We'll continue to mourn the death of Edwin Audi. Details will be coming to you later on here on KTN News, but it is not a very good morning for us. But we have to do the show, and today we'll take a look at some issues, including the Huduma Namba politics, what has been happening. Deputy President William Ruto's allies claiming that there is a plan to rig the 2022 election using Huduma Namba. We'll also talk about Chief Justice David Maraga's advice to President Uhuru Kenyatta to dissolve Parliament over its failure to pass gender parity laws. That has been stopped temporarily by the High Court. Should the President ignore the CJ's advice? We'll also talk about issues of militarizing civilian posts and institutions inside government. Is it wrong to do so? We have seen such cases inside the Kenyatta administration. Shall be taking a look at some of them. Let me go to my panelists and introduce them. This morning we have humanitarian consultant Cherotich Sei, we have youth policy analyst Gloria Oroba, as well as lawyer and political strategist Kipchumba Karori. We also have with us Mark Bichache, communication strategist, as well as Hesbon Owila, governance experts. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you. Many thanks for joining me as always. I'll be coming to you shortly. Now, members of Parliament allied to Deputy President William Ruto have claimed that the National Integrated Identity Management System is a scheme to rig the 2022 elections. Consequently, the Office of the President has swiftly come out to defend the system, also known as Huduma Namba. The Office of the President has termed sentiments by the MPs as misinformation and conspiracy theories. Our Rita Tinina reports on the latest rift between the DP's men and the Office of the President.
6 billion shillings, 45 days, 50,000 registration officers and 31,000 biometric kits. The National Integrated Identity Management System NIMS registration exercise was one of its kind. Kenyans in a mandatory exercise were required to provide detailed information from name, date of birth, place of birth, gender, marital status, education level, employment status, KRA PIN, NSSF and NHIF numbers, fingerprints and a digital photo.
But we won't collapse all this information into a single source of truth.
Even before the exercise was launched, it was met with some resistance, with questions over the 6 billion shillings budget, the privacy of data, and why the government was spending 6 billion shillings 4 months to the 2019 population and housing census, which cost the government a further 18 billion shillings.
Nikisikia makasisi wengine wakisema ati hii ni namba ya shetani. Jameni. Sheitani na kujitambulisha inaungania wapi?
37 million Kenyans registered for the Huduma Namba, but 6 months since the exercise closed, the government has remained quiet on what exactly it was up to after spending 6 billion shillings, even as it plans for another round of Huduma Namba registration for those who missed out on the first round. Until now.
Kwanza tunadai Huduma Namba ile tumeandikisha kwanza. Nyinyi mulipata? Mulipata? Sasa kama ya kwanza hatujapata, ya pili na haja gani?
Wanataka kuregister ng'ombe, wakuje kuwa tax. Wakijua uko na ng'ombe 1,000, watakuambia ulipe tax ya pesa nyingi. Alafu pia wakuibie kura.
Kwa hii Huduma Namba wameleta wale wazungu wa kutoka nje ili wakuje wawasaidie kuiba. Na tunajua sio pesa tu wanataka kuiba, pia wanapanga kuiba kura.
Hours after MPs allied to Deputy President William Ruto made the claims, the Office of the President released a statement urging Kenyans to be wary of misinformation, disinformation and conspiracy theories propagated about Huduma Namba. Moffat Kangi, the Principal Administrative Secretary in the Office of the President, says the database logistics and the software for NIMS are 100% Kenyan government funded, designed, developed and solely managed by Kenyans. Kangi says a state-of-the-art data center has been created. The data collected from the 37 million Kenyans has been cleaned up and the production of Huduma Namba cards is set to begin by the end of the year. The printing and issuance will be handled by the Ministry of Interior. The High Court, in a case challenging the Huduma Namba, directed the government to put in place regulations on how to run the project and protect data before it is implemented. The Data Protection and Registration of Persons Regulations 2020 have been drafted and are now in the pre-publication stage. Rita Tinina, KTN News.
All right, let me go to my panelists to try and put some perspective into this very latest political bone of contention that seems to be the next battle cry for the 2022 general election. Let me begin with you, Bwana Wakili, Kipchumba Karori. What is your take on the latest claims by some legislators allied to the Deputy President that there is a plot to rig the 2022 elections using the Huduma Namba system? Of course, claims that have been rubbished by the states.
Thank you, Ben, and sorry for the loss of one of your own. But coming back to the germane discussion, I think we should not rush even to the issue of rigging elections. 2022 is still far. We should ask ourselves the pertinent questions as to, before even we are done with the first Huduma rollover, that was the one that consumed 7 billion, we ought to have been told the things that the High Court talked about in that case, in terms of the issue of data protection, how will somebody utilize this data? What are the safeguards that are there? That is the first point. The second point is this. Kenyans need to see the value for their money within the first 7 billion before we go to the next. Because when you tell Kenyans, we are rolling the next Huduma Namba, we are going to take it to even 6 years old, that is not a bad thing. But the problem comes when you are not explaining yourself, you are not moving with Kenyans. There is nothing bad with a government project, but the well-being and the well-meaning of that project must carry Kenyans along. The other aspect is the aspect of the procurement, the tendering of this second phase of Huduma Namba. When was it done? Where was it done? We are doing this when we are in the realm when President Uhuru Kenyatta said all tenders floated by government should be put in a place where the public can access. We, and as a lawyer, will ask, who are the owners of this company? We have been told that there is a German involved in this who is being protected, given a VVIP security. We need to know, is it a government policy now that all entrepreneurs who come from outside are given VVIP protection? Those are some of the questions Kenyans will ask. And then again, as we go towards 2022, we need to ask other questions. Why so much pressure in having some of these things?
All right.
Is it a priority now that we must have Huduma Namba when we have so many other things happening and we have not fully utilized the data we collected from the first one? And my last point is this, Ben. How sure are we that black monopolists will not use our data for their own marketing strategies? How sure are we that our data will not land in the hands of corporates who we have seen them, even with the mobile phone communicators, we have always seen a breach of our privacy. You receive text messages telling you from pizza to even who is buying.
All right. I have a quick question for you, Kipchumba. I don't know if you can answer this, but these MPs that have been making these claims, are they not Jubilee Party MPs, which is in government right now, right?
Ben, there is something that you must be aware of about this last term of the Uhuru government. There has been a concerted effort to make sure that everything either goes to the military or the NIS. And that is ostensibly done so that they avoid or run away from the issues of questioning and the issues of parliament, the issues of oversight. So the question we need to ask ourselves also is, when did even this Huduma Namba move away from the Ministry of ICT to Ministry of Interior are now heading to NIS. What are we hiding? We have the ministry, the registrar of persons is a public office. Why don't we have it under the NIS? So the question is the movement and how this thing is being done, and when it is taken to NIS, that is where the issues of accountability cannot be followed up with. And the other thing, Ben, as I finish, when you read our constitution, every member of parliament, in his or her own right, have a responsibility to oversight government. It doesn't need to be Jubilee. We have seen Jubilee government and the Jubilee party is dysfunctional. You will not expect, if a party cannot handle internal party affairs, how can it handle complex issues as the one for Huduma Namba, which has other implications? And the other thing is this, why are we pushing Huduma Namba so fast, coming on the heels of a referendum that we have been told it is a must happen, it is a must, the people saying yes must win. So why so many things? All these are not coincidences. There is happening beneath this.
Mark Bichache, let me bring you into this conversation. There are these questions, political questions, being raised by some members of parliament allied to the deputy president. They seem to know something. Then there are the procurement issues that are also being raised over the procurement process and the tendering of a contract to do the Huduma Namba. What do we know?
Well, Ben, the only thing I will agree with Kipchumba is that the Huduma Namba communication has not been done very well by the government. That is a fact. The fact that we were given a slip that we didn't know what to do with. In fact, I query myself as to where it is. But that does not then allow us to delve into the realms of conspiracy theory, of which our politicians have now become expert in. This is what I mean. Number one, for those members of parliament to say that rigging is going to happen, yet we know very well that they have the ability to summon the CS of Interior, officers who work in the Interior, to come to parliament and answer those questions. That should tell you that, number one, they're taking the fact that there's a lacuna in information as far as Huduma Namba is concerned, to use it as a political weapon to justify their system and their deep state conversation. So that is just a very comfortable narrative to push for them, because there's already a lack of knowledge in as far as Huduma Namba is concerned. It only makes sense for them, politically speaking, to advance that particular theory. Because if they are saying that the state is involved in matters of rigging, then William Ruto himself is then a beneficiary of rigging. So how is it that the state was very okay with him in 2017 and then the deep state suddenly changed and is against him? So this is all political posturing in order to misguide the public and to create further distrust and chaos and anarchy, which is what they seem to be pushing for. But there is no basis on reality in terms of registering people having a direct impact in rigging elections. If you want to rig an election, I'll have Kenyans know, is you look at the IEBC register. That is where elections are rigged. It is not in the registration of ID cards or things like that. So this is just political posturing and propaganda. Okay.
Cherotich, welcome to the show. This Huduma Namba has been, so much mud has been thrown into it. What is your take on the latest claims being made by this group of politicians?
Thanks. Good morning, Ben, and my condolences to the Standard Group for the loss of your colleague. May his soul rest in peace. You know, I think the Huduma Namba story debacle is one for me that hinges very much on issues of public procurement. And when you look at public procurement, so I agree with both Mark and Kipchumba earlier when they referenced issues of procurement. There's always a blind spot or two or three, where at the end of the day, that 6 billion shillings or 7 billion or however much will eventually be spent will be an amount that we will come back to query. We will have Senate reports, we will have probes, and so on and so forth. So for me, number one, it's a public procurement aspect and the transparency and accountability that is required. The second and very important thing for me is data privacy and data protection. I don't have a Huduma number. I deliberately refuse to register, and I can say for the record, I will not be going for this second round, because as far as I'm concerned, if I'm going to provide my data for this Huduma number, I need to know exactly what it's going to do for me and how it will be protected. You know, when Mark says let us separate between IEBC and Huduma number, this is still part of the same government. And if you have an IEBC, a very, very important body that is unable to manage data effectively, to the extent that we still have unopened servers, to the extent that an election was nullified in 2017, it shows you that across the board, we have a government that is not, shall I say, operating at the highest level of integrity when it comes to issues of data. As far as Tanga Tanga goes, and saying that this will be used to rig elections, of course they would know. Weren't they part of Jubilee in 2017? Do they not know exactly what happened to the extent that the elections were actually nullified? So they have every right to be concerned and worried, because they have understood that over time, data can be manipulated, can be weaponized, can be misused, mismanaged to ensure a certain outcome. So whatever this Huduma number is meant to do, as far as I'm concerned, it is not something that has an immediate bearing, especially not when you look at the opportunity cost, when you look at the value for money. It does not have an immediate bearing on the lives of Kenya. In fact, we're still coming out of the COVID-19 crisis. At what point ever did we hear that the Huduma number would be used to assess, identify, pull together groups of people who would then be eligible for assistance or support during the very difficult times that families went through? So as far as I'm concerned, what is this Huduma number about? Is it financial sector deepening? Is it so that we can all be harnessed into a particular space where eventually we will have to utilize certain services or utilize certain data pathways in order to access these services? These are all questions that are up in the air, and the ordinary Mwananchi will be manipulated into believing that the Huduma number is something good for them, and the politicians will weaponize it to suit their own objectives at this particular moment.
Thank you. Gloria, what is your feeling about this? Because Mark Bichacha has called it political posturing by Tanga Tanga, really. And that's what he says this is all about. It is all about. Is it all political? Gloria, can you hear me? All right. Seems Gloria cannot hear me, or as we saw. Gloria, can you hear me? I think you muted yourself. Is it all political for the DP side in this Huduma number issue?
Ben, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
I said today I want to speak on the issues and try as much as possible to avoid the political influences. So first of all, it is our civic right as citizens to question any initiative that is taken upon by any government, and specifically this government. So the first point of departure when it comes to the Huduma number is the communication was horrible from government, because Kenyans don't necessarily know what Huduma number is about, and is this an initiative that is going to empower their lives, that is going to make accessing government services easy. So the point is there's lack of communication, there's lack of transparency on what the initiative is about, and I believe that government should do better in terms of sensitizing the people on any initiative before actually going out to the field to implement or start the exercise of that initiative. The other thing I want to talk about is the Huduma number concept is actually a great concept. It's one of the things that we are trying to emulate, you know, first world countries like Europe or the US, you know, because what it does is it centralizes all the information about the citizens into one true point of reference. So in terms of accessing government services, in terms of whether it is your driving license, whether it is the healthcare, whether it is that is the NHIF and any other healthcare that the government would be purporting to provide, whether it is even security, even in form of integrating our security systems in terms of judiciary, police force, and all these incidences where
I hear you. Gloria, I hear you, but. What we want to discuss is the questions being raised about it by the politicians. And there are some procurements queries that have also been raised about it. What is your take on that?
My take on it is that the queries are actually coming about because no one knows what this thing is about. And the fact that we're seeing external agencies, and by external I mean expatriates, foreigners, white people coming in to collect data or try to, we don't even understand what the services are about, what these agencies are doing. So of course, there's fear, there's anxiety. Personally, I also would not want to, coming from the data center world and having managed a serious data center, I know the type of information and the type of services that we do in the back end of the collection of this data. And I personally would not want my biometrics and certain parts of my personal data being stored externally, being used by third parties that I'm not aware of. So yes, what I'm talking about is the fact that there's no clear objective of where we are going with Huduma Namba is a problem. And the fact that there is lack of transparency on who we are engaging in this initiative, and by who I mean these agencies, these alleged Germans, and even the local agencies that we are using to collect the data, we want to understand what is their interest. Are they impartial? How are they going to store this data?
All right.
And above and beyond that, Ben, if you allow me to say this, above and beyond that, we also would like to have transparency and access to this information. If I'm giving my information to any a government agency for purposes of providing services to me as a citizen, I would like to access this information at any time. Meaning, if they're going to digitize it, if they're going to put it on a platform, I would want to be able to go in there and see what they have documented about my data. And we don't even have that. So when people start saying that, oh, we think that they're using this as a 2022 way of rigging the elections, they're allowed to do that because there has not been any transparency.
Okay. All right.
What our data, they're using our data.
All right. Husband, what do you think about this? The PA, the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Interior, Karanja Kibisho, has come out to call the claims conspiracy theories. Talk to us about this.
I think I agree with the PS, and in as much as the issues that are raised are issues of very genuine concern, we're talking about data security and the interest of the public at large. So when you have politicians run away with stories that are neither here nor there, politicizing a process that they need to adjudicate, and it is probably one of the most important roles of Parliament, then you can only read, conspiracy theory and, of course, tilted towards an agenda that serves the interest of a particular political movement. But then, if you situate it broadly, you realize that this is just a question of MPs from a particular side of the political divide running away from their role and politicizing the key role of individual MPs. Now, look at the two things that are coming out. One is that there is a ploy to use Huduma Namba to rig the 2022 general election. Why can these MPs go to Parliament and summon, the PS Interior, the CS Interior, and every other person who has information on the floor of Parliament? A committee on the floor of Parliament has the powers equivalent to a high court. So if it was a question of protecting the interest of Kenyans, they should not be telling us about cows and how many people will be taxed highly because they have a large number of cows, because that is in itself just whipping emotions. Then number two, and very seriously, it's a procurement issue and allegations of expatriates, people with shadowy, characters involved in the whole process. Again, that is the function of Parliament. Parliament needs to oversight. So they should actually summon these people and find out, where did the 7 billion go? How was it utilized? The next phase of Huduma Namba, how much is it going to cost the taxpayers? Where is that money going to come from? How are they going to spend it? You don't say those things in a public rally where you are just whipping emotion and politicizing something very critical. And then lastly, Ben, I think the issues of data security are major, and there are global issues that the whole world is struggling with because of the advent of the new technology that we have, and the fact that data can easily be captured and used for other things other than what the person who gave the data intended. So if the government, or let me say the legislature arm of the government, already originated a motion that is supposed to regularize this and ensure that there is a regulatory framework and a legal framework for the Huduma number. These MPs who are outside there are making a lot of noise. They are MPs of a political party that formed the government of Kenya today. So they should be a lot more proactive in parliament in ensuring that there is a legislation that protects the interest of the people that they represent. And I think it is just fooling Kenyans and politicizing and weaponizing Huduma number by going to Kenyans with stories that are neither here nor there.
All right.
Ben, just one more thing, eh?
Yes,
Ben,
30 seconds.
We must underscore the danger that when a politician like Trump begins to say that elections are going to be rigged even before the campaign period has been started, we must ask ourselves, what are we being prepared for? We're being prepared for a scenario where a certain section of politicians will say they're not accepting the results of an election. And we all know where that heads to. These are the drumbeats of war.
All right. Well, so we shall continue to focus on this and discuss on these developments. Tell us what you think as a viewer on the claims over the Huduma number system. Share your thoughts on Twitter on hashtag Inside Politics. Let's take a quick commercial break here on Inside Politics. When we come back, we shall be focusing on the Chief Justice David Maraga advisory to President Uhuru Kenyatta to dissolve the 12th Parliament over failure to legislate and enforce the 2/3 gender rule. We shall be trying to ask the question, what should the president do? Stay with us.